All right, Miss Laurie, it's time to get those houseplants back outside. We have a few questions, okay, to ask. Do I have to move my plants outside, though?
People don't have to move them out. At my house, everybody goes out to play in the summer.
Everybody goes out,
because
okay.
they're a lot easier to take care of outside.
Okay.
You can water all of them at one time. It takes me about 15 minutes to water my plants outdoors in the summer. Probably takes me 45 when they're in the house because you're back and forth to the sink with a watering jug. So everybody goes out in the summer.
Everybody goes out
but they
to
don't
play.
have to. As long as they maybe get them out and get the dust off the leaves and those kind of things, they can leave them in their house. They don't have to go out.
Okay. Is it too early to move them out? So when is the best time to do that?
It is a little early yet. We're still going to probably have a couple of frosts. At my house, I live in North Shelby Forest. We have had frost as late as April 19th.
Wow.
Now, the average last date is the 15th, but that doesn't mean that is an absolute last
Right.
frost date. And if you move them out too early, you either have to bring them back in or they'll get pinched, and it could kill them. If they're a real tender plant, it'll kill them.
Wow.
So I generally wait until about May 1st to move mine out.
May 1st, okay. So let's say you move them out and they're predicting a frost. Can you cover them up?
You can, if you use, but plastic doesn't work.
Okay,
So you almost need to use a blanket or a sheet or something like that, or move them into like a covered area where frost can't get to the leaves as easy. But if it's a real tender plant, I would go ahead and bring it into a heated space or someplace that's at least enclosed.
Okay. My indoor plants are looking sort of sad, and yes, mine are. What's wrong with them?
There's a lot of different things that could be wrong with them. It depends. Like brown tips can be either too much water or too little water. So you kind of have to get down and get into the soil and figure out what's going on with them. And because if they're really waterlogged down here, it could cause brown tips. But it also could be completely dry down there because you're only watering a little bit at the top.
Right.
So you really almost have to get them out of the pot and check what's going on.
Okay. Now, speaking of pots, why don't we, show our folks how do we go about potting a plant?
Okay. One of the best times to repot a plant is in the spring when you're getting ready to go take them outside. And this one is ready to be repotted because it's root bound.
Now, what kind of plant is that, Laurie?
This is a pothos or pothos.
Right.
I've heard it both ways.
I've heard
I'm
it
not
both
real
ways.
sure. Yeah.
It's probably a standard house plant.
It's a really sturdy house plant. You
Okay.
can neglect this one a little bit and it'll still survive. And but you can see this one. The roots are really wound around the bottom of the pot. It's time
That's
to
a good
repot
example.
this one.
Root binder, yeah.
And you can also check sometimes by just picking the pot up and looking, and you'll see the roots coming out the bottom, and that means it's time. And I generally start from the bottom and work my way up when I'm going to divide it. I'm actually going to divide this plant, and so I'm just going to pull them apart. And you can be a little brutal. People are saying, "Oh my gosh, you're going to kill the plant." You're really not going to. They're sturdier than you might think. And by pulling from the bottom into the top, it's going to kind of divide at a natural place, rather than me cutting through the top. I might be cutting through the crown of the plant.
Wow, so you really divided that one. How about that?
And that will be a good size to go. Actually, probably I would get 3 out of this one
okay.
if I were going to continue to use small pots.
Okay.
Now, the alternative would be to stick this in a bigger pot. But you want to use a pot that's about 2 inches bigger than the one that it's coming out of. But since I divided this one, I'm going to go ahead and put it.
And before you do
into
that,
this
Laurie,
pot.
look at those roots. I mean, a nice white, fibrous looking roots. So that's
These are healthy roots. Now, if you run into a bunch of brown mush down there, you need to probably cut it off, maybe even throw that plant out.
Wow.
But it means it's been getting too much water.
Okay.
And this one right now is really soggy.
Yeah.
When I picked this up at the Botanic Garden, it was in a saucer of standing water. Not a good way for a plant to be. Now, they probably will come along and dump those saucers out after a while.
Right.
You say that plant lie. That's good, Laurie.
I've killed a few in my time, too.
But you say that now.
More than a few.
You really happy now.
And I'm going to make a mess here on their table.
Oh, that's all right. That's what it's for.
You want to make sure that you leave some headspace in the top of this pot. Right now I'm caring for one of my neighbor's plants, and the soil is mounded up over the top like this. And so when you water, all the water runs off, carries the dirt all over your carpet. It's a mess. I should have said no, not unless you repot that plant. I'm not bringing it into my house. And you want to make sure you get all the air pockets out. So you kind of press it down a little bit around the outside edges. Okay.
Pack it down.
And definitely leave a little bit of headspace, because when you water, you want that water to stand there and kind of soak down through to the bottom. Okay.
And let me ask you this. So what about the soil medium? Does it matter what type of soil you
Absolutely.
use? Okay.
Absolutely. This is the Botanic Garden's own mix, and they put all kinds of leaf compost in there, and pine bark, real fine ground pine bark for drainage, some mycorrhizae. There's all kinds of good stuff in there. If you buy, you don't want to use soil from the garden. Absolutely not. You want to use a soilless potting mix. It's usually a peat base. And if it's not wet, wear a mask when you first wet it. People can get some lung problems because peat moss is really a fine
Yeah.
textured stuff. And I have a friend that has some serious lung problems after potting plants for 50 years.
Wow.
And they suspect it might have come from the potting soil. So wear a mask
Wow.
until you get it wet. And then once it's wet, it doesn't make dust like that.
Okay. Wow. How about
I
that?
didn't know that.
Okay. So you would go ahead and, I mean, do we have to water that, or would it be just?
Well,
fine like
my
it?
soil is pretty
already
wet,
wet?
but if it's not wet, then definitely water it in well, and that'll also help get rid of some of those air pockets that might be in there, and you might want to put a little more soil in there. If you're a person that doesn't water regularly, like if you might forget or you travel,
Oh, you travel,
you can use Soil Moist.
Okay.
And we've talked about this before, I think, on this show, and they're
Okay.
polymer crystals. But I went ahead and hydrated some just so folks could see what it's like. It's
pretty
like
neat.
Jell-O.
Okay.
And this was half of a teaspoon. I had my measure here someplace. There it is. This was this much dry. And I just kept adding water, and this is what it turns into.
Wow.
And what it does is it absorbs the water and then slowly releases it. So you could, probably leave this pot for 3 weeks without watering it, and then definitely when you water it again, it'll absorb it back up.
Wow.
That's good for vacation, huh?
Absolutely,
go
and
out
great
time.
for
Yeah.
outdoor containers.
That's- yeah,
If you're
great,
doing like
yeah.
tomato plants and you might be gone for a week in the summer or something. Because once your plants are outdoors, you do have to water them more often. If
Yeah.
they're in the sun, every day. And if they're in a small pot in the sun, maybe twice a day.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
bonsai trees, a lot of times have to be watered twice a day.
Okay.
But it's just, so they take a little bit more care, and just make sure you put them in your yard where they would be in nature. If they're an understory plant, they need to be under a tree. But like my citrus trees, I keep out in full blazing sunshine because I want fruit on them.
Okay. Now, what else do you have for us to see?
Okay, but dirty hands for one thing. But I wanted to show you a couple of kind of cool things to do, just that are sort of fun. This is a Tillandsia. And you can mount this on a piece of driftwood. This I just got from the river.
Okay.
And you just use liquid nails, just regular old liquid nails. And you can put it on there. Now, I think that looks a little odd. It doesn't look like nature to me. So what I do is glue a little bit of moss on there just to give it a grounding. So I would
Okay.
put a little bit more there, drill a hole. I forgot to tell you, drill your hole first because
Okay,
it's a
drill
lot
first.
easier
Okay.
before the plant's on there to drill your hole. Then you can just hang this under a tree someplace and just hit it with your water wand when you're watering the rest of your plants. I have quite a few of these.
Oh, that's nice.
And they look really nice. Bromeliads are big flowering, and they're beautiful. They have gorgeous flowers on them. A lot of foliage is red too. And you can put those on large pieces of driftwood, and you can mount them with a piece of screen. And you just basically put your large plant there, put a big piece of screen around it with some moss, just to keep a little bit of moisture on it, and then you can use a staple gun to staple that.
okay.
And eventually this will just the moss will sort of cover it up, and it'll fade away, and just leave it outdoors all summer long. And then you can either take a pup off the plant in the fall, or just let frost get it. We tend to
Okay.
think of our plants as people, and we can't let it die. It's okay to let them die. It's okay to let frost take them. Because there's another one that's fun to grow. We still have a little bit of time for this.
I know we have a little time. We do.
Papayas. You can buy a papaya at the grocery store, and they have hundreds of seeds in them, hundreds and hundreds of seeds in them. And they make really neat plants that grow very fast. They're an herbaceous tree. And this is the leaf on them.
Oh, big leaf.
And they're beautiful
Those are
leaves.
nice.
Now, this plant's growth habit is kind of a hairdo. So it'll grow, it has a stem, and these will break off and leave really nice leaf scars. So you get this scarred, round scars all over this nice stem. And then there's a hairdo of leaves at the top, but that's
like
its
the hairdo.
natural growth habit. And it'll grow about 6 feet tall if it's happy in 1 year.
Okay.
And this is one that, just let frost get it. It's okay, because you can grow it a bunch more the next year. I planted probably 200 seeds when I was working at the zoo, and I think they all came up. I had 200 papaya
Germination rate
trees.
is pretty high.
Very high. I even tried experimenting. I, gave some bottom heat, gave some mist. They all came up. So, and you can give them away, plant them at the back of your flower beds. So, but that's just another kind of fun thing to do.
All right. Well, thanks, Laurie. Appreciate that demonstration too with the repotting.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here.